Have you noticed how often the word how comes to mind? More specifically, have you noticed how it comes to mind when you have a difficulty, a decision to make, some kind of a crisis? How do I solve this? How do I end the problem? How do I get that other person from crowding me? How do I get over the nagging pain? Now, you don't even know you're asking this question. And worse than that, you don't know that you are giving yourself your own answer. I want you to know, because you have not been aware of it of yourself, that there is a constant dialogue going on inside of you which starts off, how? How do I win? How do I reduce the pain? And then, because that is your request, you get the answer. And you get the answer on the same very low level that the question was asked. Because, you see, if your spirit is free, if you understand life, if you know what you're doing here, you never ask the question, how? Because if you have freed yourself, there's no self, false self, to ask the question, how? How is always said in a state of tension, of anxiety, of desperation, in which you still, in your ignorance, believe in yourself. You're always quite sure in your delusion that you're going to sooner or later find the solution to the question, how do I do this? How do I get rid of that? For example, notice how often you ask the question, how can I push back this nagging fear that I have, that nobody knows about, and even I am not conscious of it, I just feel it. You're down at the cafe and you're having lunch, and you know that all those other people in the room, they don't know anything about you. Now you are sitting there having your lunch, but your mind isn't on that. You can't even eat consciously. Your mind is on what's going to come up 2 hours from then, and you don't know how to handle it. And so, in your secret thoughts while you're there dining, you ask, what should I do about this? Shall I give you the answer right now? Don't do a single thing about it. I don't care what it is. I'm not talking about a practical matter, getting your car fixed or something like that. You know, should I write that letter a couple hours from now, or shouldn't I? Should I make that phone call? Should I check over those records, or shouldn't I? Should I investigate this, or shouldn't I? I want you to know that there is no intelligence at all in a question like that. All there is a desperation for the survival of everything that is wrong. When I tell you that you are your own prisoner, you had better give long, hard thought about that. Instead of looking around for an answer, the prisoner in the cell can think about escape. He can think about keys in his mind. He can imagine them. He can imagine himself doing something to forge a key out of metal or something. He can think about that, and year after year after year, he only thinks about escape, and it never, never happens. I've described you, haven't I? How you're a prisoner of your own thoughts because you prefer to think about escape instead of actually performing the deed, which I am here to tell you can be accomplished. Oh, but you're so satisfied, smug, so lazy, that you prefer to lie in that cell and pace around day after day and night after night, thinking that you can be the hero, the heroine. In your minds, you believe that it is essential and necessary, vital, for you to be the one who's sitting at the little tiny desk in the cell, paper and pencil, figuring out little points. You'll get a piece of metal from a spoon. You'll get some way to grease it so that it'll go easy in the lock. And you've got the time set for when you're going to make your move. Don't you have all these things planned out as to how you're going to be happy tomorrow? How you're going to get rid of the pain? Let me tell you something so you don't go on with this horrible error anymore. You absolutely do not want to get out of that cell, and I know it if you don't. As a matter of fact, that is the last thing you want to do. You want to stay exactly where you are, and what you want to do is to stay in there and suffer and complain and holler and wreck your life internally. What you want to do is stay in there so that you can keep alive the dream of making your own key, putting the soap on it, fixing the lock in some way, so that when you get out, you sneak off and you get off into the woods out there, you can put, I'll tell you, you can put an evil look on your face and say, I outwitted that vicious world. That is what you really want, whether you know it or not. And you had better start knowing it. You want to be the person who saved himself. Why? See, there are levels of delusion. You uncover one and you find another. You uncover the next one down and you find another. On, down. Now, why all this delusion inside the cell? Because you want to keep alive the idea that you have, listen to this, that you have an imprisoned personality which needs to escape. You won't do the intelligent thing, the spiritual thing. Sitting down at that little desk and going into some true spiritual thought. You won't sit down and say, now wait a minute. I'm talking spiritually now, and you're going to have to make a little leap between the illustration and the discussion of it. You won't sit at that desk and say, now just a minute. I keep saying that I want out of the problem. If you were to challenge yourself, what you're doing, you would come up with the shocking, listen to this, with the shocking key. after the shock comes the key. And here's what the shock consists of. This human personality, this burdened personality I have, that is the thing that wants to try to get out. Just suppose that there is no one in prison in the first place. That's too much. You're going to fall on the floor when you begin to even suspect it. Millions, billions of human beings won't come within 1,000 miles of that fact, and it's a fact. Just suppose that what I call me doesn't exist as someone who needs to make all these detailed plans year after year and getting frustrated and hateful because those bars are there. What if the whole thing is a fake, a delusion, that there is no one inside who needs to get out? Now that is the fact. Now see why human beings, all 4 billion of them inside their separate little cells, find out in your own life why you are doing the following. Why you are making your plans for escape. And I'll tell you why. Your plans of being angry or being scared. You're making your plans for escape so that you won't have to face the fact that there is no one there to escape. You are doing everything possible to keep yourself locked up, and you don't know what you're doing. Wouldn't you agree, all of you here and listening to this talk, wouldn't you agree that you're in a psychological prison? Wouldn't you agree that you're always asking how to get out? How to get over the pain? How to win something? How to win something so that you can say, see, I got all that money, or I got that man in my life, or I got that man out of my life. I got all the things. See what I'm doing for my own salvation, my own escape. See, I have the key. The key was I've got this bank account. Can you think in your own minds of anything more pathetic than what you are doing? Can you think of anything more nonsensical? Can you think of anything more guaranteed to keep your torment going 24 hours a day than being inside the prison, pretending that you want out and keeping the pretense alive with foolish, useless activities and thoughts and emotions and involvements? Now I'll tell you how to really do it. I'll tell you how to get out. Don't do a thing about being in. See, when you try to escape from prison, you say, I have to escape from prison. Have you not created the prison with that very thought? I'm in prison. I've got to get out. Look how cunning darkness is. Are you following this? Do you really get it? If you say, I'm in prison, I've got to get out, you'll never get out because you don't want to get out, because you want to say I'm in prison so that you can identify yourself as a prisoner and with all the sickness and neurosis that goes with it. You know all the excuses that chronic criminals have. I'm talking about real criminals now out in the world, out near state prisons around. And you've heard the phrase, of course, they're all innocent. All prisoners are innocent if you ask them. Or look at some of their other childish excuses. I never had a chance. I was betrayed by someone. I really didn't mean to do it, and on and on and on. Why are you doing the very same thing in your own prison cell, keeping yourself in there. Listen to this, when you don't have to be inside for another second. And you've also heard, I'm sure, of prisoners when they were released. They came running back in a day or two and said, can't I come back? The world is too much for me. See, let me tell you how your mind operates, because you don't know. This is one of the things that you are unconsciously saying to yourself. I said it is unconscious. That means you don't see it, you don't know it, you don't understand it, which means you haven't probed very deeply into your mind. You are afraid that if you get out of prison, you won't know how to handle the world out there. Think of what you just said, and have said all the time. And think of who is saying it. A prison mind, a mind that knows nothing but being under the authority of the warden and the guards. And unfortunately for the mass of human beings, this regimentation, this authority, becomes so appealing to them, so beautiful. They really don't want to get out. They want to stay inside and be told what to do. Now look, let's look at it from a different viewpoint. To be a prisoner inside a prison and inside your own cell is a very miserable experience. Your freedom's restricted. You're told what to do when you don't want to do. You go down to the machine shop and work. You don't want to work down there. Now, the reason actual prisoners do this and have to bear it is because they broke human laws. And some of them, because their nature is so weak, they come back time and time again to the prison, repeat over and over, and they come back because this is what really their heart loves. You in your own prison, I want to give you a warning. Unless you strictly apply, love what you're hearing, and apply what you are hearing, there is the possibility that you will go out into the world. I'm paralleling here. You'll go out into the world, and the time will come when you won't want to be out in that world anymore. You won't want to hear spiritual truths anymore. You won't want to hear freedom talk anymore. Or you're just going to give up and commit the crime that will put you back inside of living with yourself forevermore. You know what this class is, don't you? It's a chance. It's a chance for you to understand how absolutely accurate your condition has been described, and to give you a chance to see where you have made the mistake. Are you willing to do that? Look how simple it is. You ask how. I've told you how. I've told you that you must begin to see through the mistake you've made, that there is someone, you with your name and your experiences and your past and your yearnings and your agonies, you have to see that there is no one there who needs to escape. There is no one there who needs just to make a little key, that is, get married or get unmarried, whatever it is. There's no one there who's to make any plans for escape at all, because if you do that, then you'll convince yourself more and more and more until it'll be impossible for you to ever understand what I'm telling you tonight. Instead, you'll be absolutely hardened in the belief that you must escape, which means that you prefer to be a prisoner with a self, with an I, with an identity of someone who's in, rather than give that up, to let that be extinguished and be out of it. You see, escape from psychological prison means that you understand thoroughly that you're not inside and you never were. And a person, well, you mean to tell me that all that horror that I've gone through all these years, you mean to tell me that that wasn't real, that the pain wasn't real? Of course the experience went on. I am telling you, whether you can understand it or not, that those experiences never happened to you. There is no woman there. There is no man there for them to have happened to. They happened, but they didn't happen to you. Can you see the difference in that? Pursue it a little deeper. Tomorrow, a challenge comes along. Either inwardly something overwhelms you inwardly, or something comes from the outside, financially, personal relation, anything. Something comes along. And the minute it confronts you, can you, instead of falling into the emotional whirlpool of it, can you stand back and understand that it is not happening to you? It can't happen to who you really are. Listen, because nothing bad can ever happen to truth. And if you stay in truth, if you stay in reality, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And it'll stop right there. You can get that letter or phone call, or you can go out in the world and get that slander from the world, whatever it is. But if you're living from where you should be living, the word can't enter you. The emotion can't enter you. There's no correspondence in you between the low-level experience of the world out there. And it comes to you and you stay alert and awake and you don't dive into it. That means that thought doesn't grab the experience. And you know how thought always grabs it? Look, oh, why did you say that to me? Why are you doing this to me? That doesn't go on at all inside of you. You don't answer the world the way you've always answered the world. You know how automatic, how fast we answer. And it's always negative, isn't it? Or protective or whatever. So the experience comes along and you're wide awake. Oh, you're so alert. You can see it coming a mile away. And you're watching your inner state. And by watching that inner state, you prevent the outer experience from becoming an inner experience. And you're standing there. Absolutely nothing can come to you because it is not hitting experience. It is not hitting memory. It is not hitting conceit. It is not hitting thought or emotion in any way at all. Now, if it's not hitting your thought because you've kept your thought pure, only practical thoughts going on inside your mind, if it doesn't hit your mind, your ordinary intellect, how can there be anyone to react to it? How can there be a prisoner there to say, how am I going to get out of this horrible experience that the world gave to me? There is no prisoner there. That is what is known as escape. Do you see what you have to do? Well, let's start with a little elementary lesson. How do you spend your 24 hours? What is the nature of your internal experiences? Are you always thinking about the physical? Are you always thinking about polishing your car? Are you always thinking about the new dress or the new suit or whatever you want? Are you thinking about some physical thing that attracted you and you want that? All right, now that's one way people waste their lives, always thinking about the physical unnecessarily. You have to think about the physical, of course, when it's necessary to do so. Are you thinking about, Are you thinking about another human being all the time? Tied to him, chained to him or her by thoughts, either in worship or admiration or disdain and hatred. Why don't you try that as an experiment sometime? Seeing how many thoughts are wasted in so-called positive and so-called negative projections toward other people. You're going to be astounded at how much mind power you waste in simply thinking unnecessarily about other people. Don't think about them. It's not necessary. We've classified a few areas of thought, people and physical things, and you can go on and on with it. Now, why are you wasting the opportunity and the energy by which you could see that you're not really a prisoner? Why are you wasting that instead of spending your day in spiritual matters? You come to class here and you read the books and you hear the tapes. Real honest now, what percentage of your time would you say is spent in working on one of the exercises you're given? What percentage of time is spent thinking a thought, spiritual thought, and saying, you know, that's real interesting. I wonder what it really means. I wonder how much deeper I can go in comprehending it. How much time do you spend watching other people, watching their faces, watching their reactions, and seeing how lost they really are, and then saying, well, maybe I look to them like they look to me, always getting very personal about it. You know, we say you have to get horrified at what you're doing with your life. How about that as a first essential step? You being shocked at what you do with all this natural energy that you could be using to think about spiritual things. See, look how simple it is. I have said, in the last few minutes, I've said that you should spend your 24 hours in thinking about constructive things, spiritual lessons, ideas by which you can get rid of the negativities and which will make room for the positive things. Now, I have said that as a lesson to you. See how simple it is? Now, remember and never forget, your prison nature, which is in love with those bars, your prison nature is going to resist you taking even such a elementary lesson as replacing junk thought with true thought. It is going to resist that for all it is worth. And it has enormous power over you because you don't realize how much power it has. Because most of your nature, that is on the side of what is keeping you in prison. You are cooperating with that jailer. I've told you that in all this talk this evening. I've explained to you how much the old dark nature prefers just to stay inside there and complain so that it can be the center, the egotistical, delusory center of its own prison existence. Let me tell you that prison life is no fun at all. I'm not talking for you about those actual physical bars out there. We're talking about a psychological cell that you live in all day long, and I want you to be aware from this evening on what you are doing inside there. I want you to see what is happening to you. For only by a very clear perception of you catching yourself in your tricks will you ever break them. I am telling you, you can immediately stop all thoughts about making keys to get out of there. You can immediately stop thinking about the timing of the jailers so that you can avoid them when you make your big getaway. I am telling you, you can drop completely all anxiety about getting out And when you do, you will be out forever. The way to get out is to see that there's no one there imprisoned. When you see there, that is freedom, and I guarantee you, you'll be on the outside. Then you will know from experience what it means to be outside of jail. Right now you imagine it. And do you know what you imagine outside to be as long as you're in prison? You imagine it to be another cell. That's all you can think about. How can you think about freedom when you've never had it? You can only use words. What you love is the routine of the prison, of standing behind the bars and complaining. So, when you imagine yourself out, the only thing you could possibly do is to imagine it as being what it presently is, which is repetition of memory. See what you're doing. Now look, the whole trick has been exposed tonight. You can start where you are and begin to see through it. And when you see through it, it will be an astonishingly beautiful experience. And you'll wonder how you could ever have been so deluded as to want to be behind the bars. How you could have loved being in a hateful spirit. And when you're finally out, everything is new and everything is forever. I want to talk casually and quietly with you tonight about a very, very sad story. And I should sadly tell you at the very start that it's the sad story of your life. Because, ladies and gentlemen, in this room, and all of you back in Iowa and Florida listening to this tape talk, you are part of this world. You are part of this society that you yourself complain so much about. You are it. And you come along to people and you say, "Sir, madam, you need to change yourself. Can't you see that there's something wrong with you and with this whole world, how everyone is mad, how everyone is involved in anger and hostility and confusion? Can't you see that?" You say that simple question. The average man or woman down the street there, and they look at you and they say, "Oh, you mean there's something about me to change?" Man, woman, look at yourself. You have all these terrors inside of you. And look, why are you here tonight? Because of that very fact that you don't know what to do with yourself. Most human beings are a disgrace to the human race, and they have the nerve. When you challenge them about your life, they have the nerve to say, "Oh, yes, there's something that I should change. What's wrong with me?" Now you listen. To that person, that is a very logical statement to his illogical mind. He means it in his delusion. What do you mean something to change? I've got my boat down on the lake. I've got plenty of sex. I've got plenty of money going. I've got activities. I've got a home before prices went up. I've got a nice home. I've got it made. You see why you can't talk to people about truth. You can't you can't talk to them about God. You can't talk to them about anything except their picnics and their vulgarities and their horse races and their favorite TV shows. I want to warn you people here tonight. You're wasting your life away. You've done pretty good up till now, haven't you? Well, let's see the hands of everyone here who's afraid. You know you are. You're so badly afraid that you're even afraid to admit it to yourself. People would rather continue to go through their life being miserable and being frustrated, and, this deep suppression, or they have to peer out into the world suspiciously like that. They'd rather go through the rest of their life like that rather than say, you're right. You're absolutely right. You've described me exactly. I'm hiding things. I look out at the world in the morning, and all I can do is hate it because it seems to be allied against me. The world is allied against you 1,000,000,000 to 1 because you are allied against yourself internally, and there is no other answer, and don't you try to find one. Did you hear what I just said? You say that they make it so hard to earn a living, and then when I get it, they tax it away. Or they take it away at the grocery market. Don't you tell me you're not saying these sentences all day long, because I know you, every one of you in this room and listening to this tape. I know the sentences that you suppress when you're in the last line in the supermarket, and the last person in a long line. And life seems, doesn't it? It seems so futile, no purpose. What am I doing? Where am I going? The reason you look out at the world and see it as hostile, as against you, as overwhelmingly against you, is simply because the same thing, exactly the same thing, is going on inside of you. What you have in your mind and in your feelings, in your general spirit, what you have inside of you, you project out into the world. That is what is saying it to the world out there. Listen to what I'm going to tell you. There is no such thing as an enemy out there if you're free inside. There has to be a great error in our thinking for us to continue to remain inwardly in a negative, self-lacerating state. There must be something wrong with us that we would prefer to stay that way in order to create the necessity of projecting it out to the world and fearing it. I was talking a bit earlier tonight with someone about face watching. Do you know why you watch other people's faces so carefully and so closely? You want to see if you can study their mood. You want to see if they're angry with you, whether they disagree or agree with you. And if they smile at you, you're at ease for about 3 minutes. Then you have to go back to studying them again. You're looking out at that whole world, hoping for a smile. Let me tell you, you're never going to get it, and you never have. Don't you understand the most elementary principles of even ordinary psychology, to say nothing of spiritual psychology? Which is this, one of them. An individual who has not found himself, doesn't know what life is all about, he will be scared. That's what fear is, alienation from truth. Being scared, he or she will also be desperate. Being desperate, he or she will also be violent. He or she will also be greedy. He or she will look out at that world and say, I've got to win. I've got to win over it, but you will never win. What you'll do is continue to go mad. And you're doing pretty well at that right now. Haven't, haven't you haven't you noticed the utter confusion inside of you when you say, I've got to win, but you don't know what to do next. And so you go out and you make a lot of money, or you cheat someone and make a lot of money, or you hurt someone and make a lot of money, and you lie about everything, and you fake it, and you wear masks of being a decent human being. Let me urge all of you, when you leave this meeting tonight, or do it right now, you write down, either in your mind on a piece of paper, a hyphenated word. And that hyphenated word is self-destruction. You never again have any excuse to look out at that world and say, why are the odds so great against me? I want to be happy and they won't let me be happy. I meet a nice woman and it goes on well for a couple months or a couple years, and then something goes wrong and we fight. I can't be happy with a woman. I can't be happy financially. All they do is take it away once I get it. I can't be happy even in my entertainments. Some of them are illegal and others immoral. Anything I want to do, there's a blockage for it. Now I'm going to, before we go any further, I'm going to introduce you to something that perhaps you've never ever even glanced at before. It's called the only answer. And you better listen, because you haven't found it up till now, but you can find it tonight. That is, you can begin to understand the principle of it. Then after a while you can begin to apply it practically, and you'll understand it by living it. Solution. You see, the odds are against you out there, which you have your attention all the time, because the odds are against you inside. That is, everything you're doing to make yourself happy will fail. Look, please, you might as well give up. You're not going to win in that way. There's nothing you can do, absolutely nothing you can think about that will save you. If you could have, you would have thought of about when you began to see what a problem this life was to you. Remember when you were 18 in high school there, and you had all those agonies with teachers and grades and girlfriends and boyfriends and the whole mess? Remember how you frantically went around, oh, maybe I can ask my parents, and they didn't know the answers, did they? Maybe I can go to college. That'd be the answers. The more college you went to, the less you knew, the more confused it get, and the more people took advantage of your weakness and your ignorance, and the more people you took advantage of because of your weakness and of your ignorance. So the first point is this. You might as well give up. You're not going to do it in the way you've been trying to do it up to this point in your life. Now, you understand, do you not, that this is good news? See, good news consists of something in which you no longer try to repeat the solution. Now, if you no longer try to repeat the solution coming from your intellect, if you no longer do that, then there cannot be a repetition of the results of that repeated solution. Therefore, that leaves a blank space. That leaves room for something else to begin to operate inside of your spirit. That leaves the opportunity for you to begin to reduce the odds of 1,000,000 to 1, and they are that and more with most people, to begin to reduce the odds. Now that's a preliminary, and here we're getting into something very profound, so you must indeed, as the young man said, listen carefully. Only with a certain new kind of internal collapse will you ever be able to conquer both life and death. Now, let's first of all see how the religious hypocrites go about it. They have a problem, they have a crisis, and they collapse. And they go into what they call prayers. They go into their chanting and their meditating. And after about 10 minutes, they get up and go out and go back to their slander of other people, to their viciousness. And then life hits them again, and they go back to their prayers again. Then they get up and slam somebody, and somebody slams them again. This is called religious hypocrisy. This is called self-deception. This is called loving the madness of the world, which includes you. Now, we have said in this group here that we are fed up, that we're tired of being hypocrites. We're tired of pretending that all is well. And we have said, come what may, and may heaven help us, we're going to do something that is really different, which basically means to stop doing the familiar. Now here's what has to happen. Don't you try to change anything. If you change it, you'll just come back to the same thing in a circle. What you have to do is to continue with your hypocrisy, because that's the only thing you can do, but with one element added. How have you ever prayed, in the usual old ways, and wanting something from heaven, right? And you remember how quickly you forgot heaven once you got a raise in pay? Once the boyfriend came back, no more interest in anything up there at all, but continued interest only in what's down here. A new element has to be added to prayer, request, use any term you want, which is for you to catch yourself in the act of being a phony. You have to catch yourself at the moment of your collapse, when something goes bad and you break down and cry. You collapse, all of you collapsed at least 20 times today, internally, not outside. Didn't you? Did you collapse? Of course you did. You get mad at somebody. Collapses anything negative. Furious, bored, whatever. That's a collapse, is it not? All right. The next time you collapse, I want you to see what a big fake you are. You have very cunningly allowed yourself to collapse so you could identify yourself as a defeated person. So now you can go on to the next pretense of saying, well, maybe someone or something or heaven will help me. And all this is a vicious circle that you have very cleverly planned out in your unconscious mind so that you can keep your old nature and remain exactly as you are, which shows what you love. And I better ask you a question. If you love your own darkness, what do you hate? If you love darkness, what's the opposite of darkness? If you love darkness, you hate the light. Don't you tell me you know God. Don't you tell me you know what it means to be decent, to be spiritual. You don't know it at all because you're still playing the game on you. This is not criticism, it's a fact. And why are we bringing it out? Because there may be 2 or 3 or 4 people in this room who are ready to make the great experiment of seeing what happens when you catch yourself in the act of pretending that you want out. Now look. You have to admit that you're helpless. Now, careful on this one. If you are helpless and hopeless, absolutely, that is the most beautiful state you could ever be in as a beginning student of the spiritual path. Because if you're helpless, then you can no longer call on your idiotic self to save you, thank God. Who do you think you've been calling on? The only person you know, the only God you know, which is you. No wonder you get the kind of answers that you get. If you can't see it clearly in yourself, then also work on seeing it in other people. Have I described other people as well as yourself here tonight? Don't you know people who go to church all the time and who collapse and get angry all the time? And you kind of know, don't you, that nothing is ever going to be different? I'll tell you what to do with those people. Get them out of your life, psychologically, if not physically. Now, again, things are pretty bad. You're angry and you're nervous. You don't know what to do. And so you say, I'm going to find an answer. I'm going to find a solution. You even say, I'm going to pray to God about it. You think you know who God is. See, you have created your God out of your own desires. Please save me, please rescue me. And you're praying to yourself, and you give yourself the answer. You understand, do you not, that God is not an idea, not a thought, not a belief, not a word. You cannot create God in your own mind. If you do, then you'll be like the millions of people who think they're going to go to heaven, who think that they're decent right now. Another thing we all often do when we collapse and look around for help is that we think we can help. You ever notice whenever you ask anyone, whether it's heaven or another human being, you ask them for some kind of a guidance, that your mind immediately goes to work real fast and you begin filling in the blanks, and an idea will come to you and you'll get excited, and there you go again. You're gone. Are you beginning to understand now what it means to give up your life in order to have life? How would you describe your life up till now? If you were, think about it. You can think while I'm talking now. Go ahead. How would you describe your internal life? How about the one word, wreck? Pretty accurate? If you described it as that, as chaos, as pain, and as suffering, why don't you try sometime stopping right there? Knowing absolutely, finally, with a period at the end of the sentence, that you are a wreck, and also understand, because of your past experiences, that you no longer know what to do. This is the beginning of the end, if you were to do this. This is the beginning of the end of your ego life, of all your self-worship, of all the things you've built up inside of yourself as protections, as support. As you are seated here tonight, one of two things is the fact. You are lost, or you have found truth. And all of you in this room are lost. Aren't you excited to hear that? Don't you dare let anything inside of you go against that simple statement. You do so with your own peril. Look. We've been fakes all our life. Got it made. We don't even see how we're getting older and worried, or we don't see that. We've got it made. Someone comes along and says to you, you know you don't have it made at all. You should go up to the man who tells you that and shake his head and say, thank you for stopping me before I went over the cliff. You're right, absolutely right. It is one way or the other. There's no halfway at all. I'm either free of my pains or I have them. And sir, or thank heaven, thank you for telling me that I'm a miserable wretch, that I don't have the answers, I never have, and unless I straighten out, I never will have them. Are you going to be grateful for that? Or are you going to yield to the temptation to fall back into the usual ego defenses, the usual lies, and go right back where you've been all your life? If you were to accept the simple, plain fact that your life is in chaos, that you don't have the answers, and you don't know where to find the answers, if you were to do that, I'm going to tell you what will happen to you. If you'd simply say, I'm not going any farther in my lies and hypocrisy. I'm going to stop right here. May God help me, but I'm going to stop right here because my life isn't worth it. It isn't worth the lies. It isn't worth the competition all day long. Trying to beat out other people, trying to convince myself that one more day and I'll have it made. You're not going to have it made tomorrow or the next 10 or 50 years. You're not going to make it at all because you're walking on the wrong path. You're walking the downhill path, which you call uphill. I'll tell you what you'll meet. I'll tell you who you'll meet. If you're a thoroughly honest human being, you'll meet God. And it won't be the Word. And it won't be the church. And it won't be the hymn book. And I won't be talking with other people about religious subjects all alone, all by yourself. You will know what it means to feel the Spirit of truth come into your life. And you'll know what it means to gradually, but oh so definitely, begin to change the way you think, the way you feel, the way you see yourself, the way you see the world, the way you see life, the way you see death. Something has to happen to you. You of yourself cannot make anything happen. Let's try that one again. You of yourself, by using thought and emotion and action and belief, you of yourself cannot cause anything good to change. You cannot transform yourself at all. Because all the known you is confusion, delusion, negativity, self-egotism, etc. And egotism is not going to change into non-egotism. What you can do, again, is to know that nothing you initiate can cause a change. It can only cause repetition of the same. Haven't you proved it? Of course you have. Be so thoroughly convinced that you can't change yourself that you just give up. And I give you permission, absolute 100% permission, for you to give up in great fear and trembling. Be as scared as you want to be, but give up. Feel that you're going to die, but give up. Feel you're going to fall into hell, but give up. You'll be an extremely unique human being. You'll be one of the few human beings who enter this life who ever go out of it with God within. The rest is just words. The rest is lies. If you will reach the state of desolation without having any aim to change it, without wanting to lift the pain of the burden of it, if you will stay right where you are, I'll tell you what will happen to you. After it happens, your memory will begin to work correctly, and you'll remember when you were a little girl or a little boy, and you went to Sunday school or church, and you read certain religious truths which were true in themselves. The truths were true, not the people. And you read various parts of religious books and heard people teach it to you that said that when you fall, God will give his angels power to catch you. When you were a little girl, a little boy, you read that and you said, that sounds nice. But you never found that God, did you? You went out, you grew up and you went out into that world and it battered you and it slammed you around and you slammed it back, and there's the insane asylum. You yield, you let God happen to you, and sooner or later the memory will come to you. You know, when I was 10 years old and heard that, it didn't mean anything, but I know absolutely what that means because it has happened. Then you go out into the world, and it's a new world because you're new. What do you care whether you've got only 20 cents an hour or whether you've got $20 an hour? That's not your purpose in life. Let the rest of the idiots scream and holler for more money or for more profits or for higher or lower taxes. What do you have to do with the insanity of this world? You're supposed to be human beings who are on the road to sanity. And you will be, and you can go very fast if you want to. And oh boy, and oh girl, what a different day will unfold for you from now on. You know something from yourself, from your own spirit, that previously you had only heard about. And when you heard about it and you saw all the hypocrites, all the people who call themselves good and religious, and it turned you against them. And then you found out that you were just as big a hypocrite as they were in your own way. You were a financial hypocrite, maybe not a religious one. You'll sit back in life and you'll understand the whole story. You'll see how we've all come into this world mad. And our parents begin to work on us, and society begins to work on us. And you don't know what to do. And then you come to a place like this, or you read a book, and something stirs inside of you. And you continue all the way. Look, please, you're not going to do it alone. You're not going to do it by coming to one class or reading one book. The sickness has built up for all these years. And you're not going to let go overnight because you're afraid to let go. But we'll teach you here how to let go as fast as possible so that you don't have to suffer from yourself anymore. Want it? It's available. How many of you like waiting in grocery lines? No hands. How many of you like waiting in any kind of a line? How How many of you like waiting on anyone, anytime? You're supposed to pick up, and they say just a minute, and it isn't a minute, is it? Look at your contradiction. You don't like waiting for other people or things in this world, but your whole life is spent in waiting for something good to happen to you, and it never will because you can't wait for it according to your present expectations. See, you are still believers in superstition and magic, and don't tell me you're not. Because the very fact that you wait means that you're expecting something supernatural, something mysterious, you know, the knight on the white horse, expecting something to come along to change your life, to give you something you don't understand at all. You still think in terms of some person or some object or some feeling to come to you. Now already you are sunk because you are saying, I'm waiting for happiness, for a thrill, for fulfillment, for excitement, for security. I am waiting for them to come to me in some strange way, and you don't know that the only person who can receive them is someone who doesn't exist there at all. You have a fantasy that you can be fulfilled by a fantasy. I want you to think very, very carefully this evening about the fact that you are waiting for something to happen. And when you do that, you automatically put up idols, false gods, magicians, nice people out there who are going to bring it to you. Let me ask you, if you want something to make you happy, you tell me who's going to bring it to you. I know what trick your mind played on you when I said that. You said, well, I don't believe that because I've been to this class and I understand that happiness has to come by working inside myself. If you are working to change yourself, you change. If you are not working to change yourself, you don't change and you remain as you are and you remain a waiter. Hopeful. And you are frozen. There's no spontaneity in you. There's no just flowing. You can't even come into this room without freezing up when some little thing happens that you can't fit into your familiar classifications. Someone looks at you and you don't know what to do. Someone asks you to do some small little thing, maybe play the piano or pick up a paper, and you have to stop and think about it. I see you stopping to think about it. Why don't you let loose, let go, and flow? Do you understand what I'm talking about? No, you don't. Because you never catch yourself going like that, huh? I ask you to do the simplest of things, and you just stand there and stare at me. Paralyzed. This isn't just merely your action here in this room. Terribly, this is your entire life. And it goes on when you're all by yourself, too. Have you ever noticed you don't enjoy your own company? And can you blame yourself? Having to go to that room, to that home, and walk around with you all day long? A very dismal prospect. This is because, again, you are waiting for something to come along and save you. And by this time, you should understand the falseness, the error of the course of thinking that anything can ever come from the outside. Look what you've been doing, looking for the beautiful woman. Don't you? And if you don't do it outwardly, you do it in your daydreams. Oh, what a stuffy little mind you have, you men. I wouldn't trade with you for $1 zillion. And you ladies, in your own way, what you want, and what you want largely in one way, is to worship your own mind. Both of you, of course, both you men and women. Think about mind worshiping. You worship what you are. What you are is all you have. All you have is thoughts that go back, turn back on themselves all day long so that you end right back up with yourself. How many of you ever played baseball? You all know the game, don't you? Let's set the stage for those of you who don't. Who knows nothing about baseball? Raise your hand. Everybody knows a little something. Mike, did you go to school?
For a little while.
You didn't take baseball as a subject. Baseball diamond, right? Home plate, first, second, third, and home again. I'm using this just as an illustration. Get a point over it, and it'll become clearer to you if you offer visual presentations. Home plate, right? Where the batter stands up and hopefully hits the ball a home run, or with the assistance of the other players manages to get around and make a home run. Well, this is a negative baseball story. You stand at home plate with self-strain. You know what self-strain means? It goes on all the time, doesn't it? You don't know what to do, and you stare out at the world. I vow 99% of your entertainment is just staring out at the world, waiting. I saw it here tonight, right here in this room. You have nothing to do, you just stare. And you don't know you're doing it. You're at the plate, first plate. And you think, well, I'll find some way to get over this self-strain, this pain, this paralysis. The man described it right. That man did. He said that I think about girls all the time and think about sex and have sex fantasies. It's right. He knows how I think, because that's exactly what I do, don't I? You men, you can all nod your head. You ladies with your own fan. I know that. So you say, I know what I'll do. I'll solve the problem of my pain, of my confusion. What I'll do is run to first base. Home, first base, right? I'll go to first base. Now let me tell you what that is. Oh, how dreadful. In order to solve the problem of your self-strain, you go to first base, which is self-consultation. A madman is consulting a madman on how to become sane. Do you glimpse the horror of consulting yourself about rescue? I mentioned the phrase mind worshiping a minute ago. See how accurately that describes it? Consulting yourself means you have, heaven help you, confidence, hope, excitement, that if you talk to yourself enough, you will eventually come up with an answer that you are bothered by, a question that bothers you. If you consult yourself, the squirrel cage again, the squirrel running around in the cage. I wonder when you are going to understand that there's absolutely no point in you continuing to think the way you now think. Put that another way, maybe become clearer. When are you going to understand that there's no point in you continuing to live the way you're now living? With all the waiting and all the suppression and all the pretense that it doesn't hurt. It hurts pretty bad, doesn't it, all of you? Pretty bad. So, you go and consult yourself as a means of escaping the self-strain, and you don't get an answer. So you go to the third stage, which was second base. And look what happens. You've had the strain, and you went to self-consultation. You tried to answer it yourself by going out and doing all sort of things, getting excited. And nothing happened inwardly that you expected. You stayed the same kind of a man or the same kind of a woman you were before. And then on second base, you find self-doubt. You know what self-doubt is? Scientifically explained with spiritual scientific scientifically explanation. It means you simply are so loaded with many conflicting thoughts that they, having taken over your life, they come up and suggest a solution, and then that doesn't work, of course. Then another solution comes up, and you're kind of idly, in a way, watching this whole process of seeing that nothing succeeds as you wanted it to succeed. You're not getting the kind of success that you asked for, and you ought to be very glad of that, because you're asking for more disaster. So you stand there on second base in self-doubt. And now you're beginning to get scareder and scareder and worried that there's no solution at all. Well, haven't you consulted yourself? And then nothing good happens, and you go into self-doubt. And now I want to tell you the most dangerous stage of all, which is represented by third base. And I want all of you here listening to me, and those of you in this room, to know that whether you're aware of it or not, every one of you here listening to me are very deeply involved in it. And it's called self-fantasy. When a human being looks for solutions, and he looks in the wrong places, of course, in his own mind, consults himself, when he does not find solutions and the self-doubt begins to shake him too badly, in order to escape the pain of not finding the answers that he wants, that his ego wants, as a last resort, he will go into self-fantasy. And all this is very mixed up. Self-fantasy, self-doubt. You can understand how they all go into the mind together and shake the person. Now, what is self-fantasy? I just explained one of them a minute ago. You go into sex thoughts. You go into anything, whatever, that keeps you the center of your own life, that keeps you agitated, that, if you can believe this, that keeps you in self-doubt. Because as long as you're in self-doubt, you can say, I don't know the answers, and you clap your head and you do your forehead and you scream and you cry and you say, what a vicious, cruel world this is. And you have it in you now, that very thing. What a vicious, cruel world this is. Have I not been sincere in trying to find the answer? Haven't I been good? See, you just gave yourself away. Haven't I been good? See, I have been good. There's the self again. Haven't I tried? And no matter what I do, the whole world seems allied against me. Yes, the whole world is allied against you, and it always will be, and this is what you prefer. And that is what is called self-delusion. That is what is called self-fantasy. That is what you have asked for because you won't listen to something that is different from you. Consider again the expression mind worshiping. All of you are doing that. Now, I'll tell you the perfect evidence of it. You're worshiping your own self-consultation, asking for answers from yourself. And no matter what happens, you refuse to face the fact that you never have known what you're talking about. And by the way, you never will. You refuse to bear the agony to the very end until something smashes inside of you, until something breaks. You always find a way out of the confrontation. You always hang on to yourself looking nervously around out at the world. Of course you have enemies. You create them. Now look. I know that along with your arrogance, matched with arrogance is terrible pain. You know, you see an arrogant person and you think he's having the time of his life, don't you? Someone in power, maybe. Someone who can hurt other people, even a parent hurting a child or hurting a spouse. You see an arrogant, insolent person who has temporary power, and let me emphasize the word temporary because that's what it is. You see someone who has that, and if you envy them, there's something wrong with you, right? because there's something in you that longs to be in their place. But here's the main point. And let's see if you do understand this. That along with your arrogance, which, by the way, is the same thing as aggressiveness, as hostility, that the very usage of an aggressive attitude, aggressive spirit, fighting this world for what they've done to you, and vowing you're going to win, which you won't do. What else is it accompanied by except a great sense of hopelessness, because you are indeed trying to do the impossible, of trying to prove that your fantasies are facts which can never be done. Now, when a person first reaches third base and begins to build his structures of delusions, of daydreams, which turn into nightmares, at that very point, if he runs across a teaching, a class, a book, a cassette tape, and he doesn't choose to go back to home plate, which is self-strain again. See, he makes the average person makes the entire trip, and he starts the whole thing over again. If reaching third base, and he runs across a teaching, and all of a sudden he blinks his eyes at what he read on that page, which some of you have done, or listens alertly to that tape, something besides his physical ears is listening to that talk, he will begin to understand the alternative. He will begin to see where he was heading into a hardening of his spirit by choosing fantasy, by choosing to go out of his mind. That's a pretty good phrase. You've heard it, haven't you, many times? He's gone out of his mind. She's lost her mind. When you get to third base and you come in contact with the truth, you can begin to see where you're heading. And if you make the right choice, of course, then you're going to say, now wait a minute. My father was a brute. And my mother the same way, in her own way, a little more subtle maybe. Or those relatives, what I had, they were all drunks and all crude, vulgar people. They had no sense of decency. And they have made this world what it is. Hold it just a minute. The individual says, for a very brief second, I heard something that was not my father, my physical father. I heard something that was not a part of my mother's constant wet eyes, which I, even as a child, knew was hatred and hostility. Yeah, you could read it, couldn't you? You didn't know what to do with the interpretation, but you could read it, couldn't you? All of you. Just a minute. Something that is not a part of my accumulations said something to me, and I heard it clearly. This man, this woman can be in this game too. Something in that person begins to question for the first time in his life the necessity of running back home again, to home plate. Because where is he when he's back there? To self-strain again, right back where he started. Isn't that the story of your life? Going through this process of strain, self-consultation, self-doubt, and on over to fancy, and then you come back to home again. We talked about this before, I know. But aren't you excited? I know I am, about the prospect of when I get to third base, just walking off the playing field. I tell you, you don't have to complete the game. Nine members on a baseball team, right? 9. You had better listen to me. You had better make up your mind that you're going to defy those 8 other players no matter how they throw bats at you and scream at you and say you're disloyal to the game. You better stick with it. We've got to win. I tell you, you can leave third base and walk right through that threatening crowd. There's 4 of them on either side with their bats and their balls and their hatred and their violence. I'm talking about every other human being you've ever met. That's the other 8 players. Caution. I've told you what to do. Don't you make the mistake of glorifying yourself as a hero, of walking through that gang of thugs, the other 8 other players who want you to continue with the game so that they can win it. Don't you get glorification. I've told you too many times, don't you dare create enemies.